Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fight Talks. This is Philly P coming at you from PeoriaLife.com. Today we have an incredible guest, one that I am most excited about. This is Mike Goodwin. I have known about Mike Goodwin for quite a long time. He's the owner of a promotion in Iowa, or really just the Midwest, but Caged Aggression. In my opinion, it is the premier amateur professional promotion here in the Midwest. You do not get better with matchmaking. You do not get better with personnel selection. So thank you so much for being here, Mike.
Oh, of course, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
So real quick, I just want to throw out, he's got a show coming up here. It's called The Triad, March 20th, 21st, and 22nd at the River Center. It's 136 East 3rd Street in Davenport, Iowa. You can also watch cagedaggression.tv. General admission, $45. You can get a VIP seats for $600 for a table, or you can get your front row cage side for just $100. If any of you guys are out there and you've been wanting to see promotions come to town, these are the guys. These are the guys that we have to get in here. This guy's got access. He's got experience. He knows. I mean, you got what, 150 fighters just coming for this one that's coming up.
Well, so what happens is, and that's part of the motivation behind the multi-night events, is we've done 22 two-night events, and we did 3 three-night events, and I swore to my family and my team that I would never do another three-nighter because those take years off my life. But honestly, the motivation behind it is when I put out an event announcement, what I do, my process is a little different. So the first week or two, I'll compile a list of interest from coaches, managers, fighters, previous fighters and all of that. And the reason I do that is because, there's thousands of guys out there now throughout the country that I've been able to work with or connect with over the last 15 years almost. And so the concern is that I would spend a whole week just finding out even who's available if I started just going out and plucking names. So the reason I start compiling a list of interests is it shows me who's available, who's training, the coaches and the managers. They're telling me who's in the gym. So when I put out an event announcement now, I will sometimes get 150 to 200 names, and I've only got room. Even a two-night event, I've only got room for 44, which is, it blows my mind every show, man. And it's super humbling that much talent wants to be a part of it. So that was the motivation. This last show in October, we did a two-nighter, and here I have to deliver all this bad news. And some gyms are sending me 7, 8 guys, and then sometimes the way it shakes out, I don't have room for anybody. So I'm losing an entire gym worth of talent because, to me, matchmaking is the most important. It's got to be a good fight. It's got to be fair for both guys involved. And if I don't do that, then what am I doing here? So I tell these guys it's never anything personal. I would love to do a show every weekend if there wasn't a business side to this thing. So that's my motivation is, I got 150, 200 guys. Even with 3 nights, I only have room for about 66, 70 tops. So it's a good problem to have, but I've never been a fan of disappointing anybody.
Well, I think that's phenomenal. Having a triple digit fighter pool to pull from. Just incredible. I'll tell you, there's nobody else that I know that's doing anything like that in the Midwest. It's got that kind of fighting pool. But I do want to touch on matchmaking for a moment because I think it's one of the most important things that a promoter does with his teams, and I'll tell you why. So I was working out in a gym. A gym that a lot of guys come through that that want to fight, either amateur or professional. And this guy came in, he'd never trained before, and it was clear, like he'd thrown a few punches, maybe been in a few street fights, but was not trained, very stiff. And started asking a few questions. And it turned out he'd been signed up for a fight down in Missouri, and he had 6 weeks. He had 6 weeks to get ready for this fight. I'm like, oh man, like how long you been boxing? Never boxed. How long you been kickboxing? Never kickbox. Wrestling? Nope. Jiu-jitsu? Nope. Had literally 0 experience, and he was going against a 3-0 professional. It hurt me to my core. I'm like, these people are actually out here where they're just going to take advantage of this guy. He's going to get hurt. And then this other guy's, he's going to get a win on his record, but is it really a win? It's not a win for the crowd, just watching some guy get beat up who didn't have the, the skill set to make it a fair fight or even a fun fight. But after I saw that, I was telling you a little about the technology. I started developing some technology so that we could make matchmaking not only a lot easier for guys like you that have these fighter pools, but we can widen the pool. Already have your availability dates in there. You've got the numbers that people are working on in terms of weight, reach, all of that information's in there. And then it just drills it down. So like if you've got somebody who weighs 155 pounds, and you can drill down their like their right cross and see how hard they're hitting compared to all of the other people in their weight class. Or if somebody's, maybe you don't think they're putting the work in, maybe you can watch this, track their performance and see if maybe their performance is dipping. Maybe they're not spending the time at the gym. But anyways, that's been my vision. So I actually started my own promotion here in Illinois to try to get that vision off of the ground. It's I will say having a promotion in Illinois has its own challenges.
Oh yeah.
Working with the state, the regulators, and there's a ton of wonderful people that work within the state, and they really have all of the fighters, coaches, and trainers' best interests at heart. But I just we were talking a little bit beforehand. Where's that middle ground? Between having allowing the promoters to go out and do what they do best and build a really successful promotion, but also, keeping that mind on safety.
Yeah. So Illinois, that's a tricky one for me because I actually started in Illinois,
No
and
kidding,
I believe
where
the
at?
first 3 years of my shows or promotion were in Illinois, and it was back, it was back before they sanctioned the amateur fights. Okay, so and I won't get into any name calling or whatever, but long story short, I was 6 days out from an event, and I was made aware on that 6th day out that everything changed, and now there's all these requirements and paperwork. And long story short, it was to the point where I was willing to drive to Springfield, whatever I have to do. The show must go on. They pulled the show out from under me. They pulled my liquor license, and I never went back, man. I moved to Iowa, and honestly, it was, for our promotion, it was the best thing that I could have ever done because I just never really felt any support on that side of the river. And, when we're putting on events like this, the athletic commission is kind of God. And it's important that we have a great relationship and that they support us when we're doing that, and I had a really bad experience in Illinois with the athletic commission, but again, that's been 11 years ago.
Yeah, well, and I remember the state of things was different back then, and I recall I think it was maybe 14 years ago when this happened, or maybe 13 years ago, but there was a fight that happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a kickboxer who died because the officials in the ring. I mean, he was a 20-year official, but
Right.
he didn't stop the fight. The guy, I mean, his legs were out from underneath him, he lost it, and they didn't protect him, and that was what they used as the catalyst to just completely overhaul everything in the state of Illinois. And I don't know, I think and for me, I see it as twofold. Like I want to see fighters be protected and safe, but at the same time, what have we really done? We've just removed access to possibly the safest way for them to fight, with eyes on them, with the right individuals, with enthusiasts, with people who care about them. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, and we cut our nose off to spite our face here in Illinois.
Yeah, it's tricky, because we talk about bad matchups and stuff. I mean, there's a mountain of reasons why a bad matchup ends up in the cage. Not all of them are devious. But at the end of the day, that's why we pay a lot of money to the athletic commission. They're the ones that approve the fights. So statewide, and this is no attack, but statewide, it's up to them to approve and not approve a fight that doesn't make sense. And if you're just approving every fight out there without, doing due diligence or research on why you're approving that, yeah, some people are going to get hurt. And, because some of these guys will go out there and couple $100 and they'll fight anybody type of mentality is really terrible for the sport too.
So
Yeah, I totally agree.
I agree. Like, not only that, basically in Illinois, you're not allowed to throw elbows in any kickboxing matches. Not
Sure.
only that, there's so many rules. Like, here's how it works in Illinois: boxing license and full contact sports are two different things. It costs $800 at least to apply for your boxing license, for an amateur license. For professional, it costs $1,000. So it's just a lot of loops and hurdles in Illinois. Like,
I'm sorry. I'm curious about your thoughts on. There's another promotion out there by the name of Rough and Rowdy. I'm sure you've heard of it.
I actually haven't.
So it's run by Barstool Sports. Dave Portnoy. I think you should be aware that this is out there, because I think that, again, it's twofold. But essentially it's complete amateurs going against complete amateurs in 3-round, 1 minute boxing rings.
Okay.
So part of me, like the promoter part of me is like, no, this is so bad. Like, the matchmaker in me is like, somebody's going to get hurt. But then there's the other part of me where I'm like Butterbean, the famed boxer. He came from promotion exactly like this.
Sure.
So there's like this careful balance of, how do we create a stage, and for the fighters to be able to come out and show off their skill set and do it in the most safe way possible without it being a hindrance monetarily to the promotions.
So yeah,
Sure.
like I agree. Like, okay, so one of the reasons like I started the Peoria Martial Arts Forum, so because I realized something rummaging, that because we had an event here called Guns Up, Gloves Down to promote guns violence here in Peoria, because it's a really big problem. So because it was a fight between two batches between KOK Boxing and Combat Academy. So KOK Boxing has a couple of professional boxers. So, but Peoria Combat Academy was born out of something called Peoria Fight Club, where the head coach would like make viral streams of underground fights. Eventually, he found his own professional fighting gym out of some of the stronger guys out of the gym.
So wildly successful from a view standpoint.
So then it got me realizing, why don't we have any professional fights here? Yet we have KOK Boxing, Combat Academy. We also have Peoria Athletic Club, Peoria Muay Thai. We have several Jiu-Jitsu gyms. We have Soo Kim, Taekwondo. We have several Kung Fu gyms. Yet nobody talks about our fight culture here. So that's why I started to get this together. And also, that's why I also reached out to Phil, because he's a fight sports enthusiast. I'm also looking at the project. He was very enthusiastic, and he's been a big help, to the point where I was convinced him to move back to Peoria with his family. He's been nothing but helpful, because here's how the thing about what makes Peoria unique. Again, I apologize for bragging about our city. We're in a huge place that's between Chicago, St. Louis, Iowa, and Indiana. So also, one thing about being a fighter is that it takes money. Like, it's not just about training how hard. You need to get promoters. You need to get people who can actually pay for because you have to travel around the country, and that takes money. Not everyone has an access, especially people from poor areas who watch boxing, who grow up on watching watching MMA and other combat sports. Yet it takes money to achieve your dreams, whether you're a fighter or some other career.
Yeah, I just so you guys know too, I live in the Quad Cities now, but I grew up in Galesburg, so very, very, very familiar with Peoria. Yeah. So I'm very familiar with Peoria.
That's very cool.
Not for obviously MMA, it's working with the gyms and stuff, but yeah, I mean Peoria. The thing about those guys is, like, Blackerby is one of those coaches where, and I have a lot of these coaches now that I really like working with, because they can send me a brand new guy and tell me it's their debut, and I'll find out about their skill set and their style and all that stuff. But I know when they bring me a debut that they are ready to get in the cage. Okay, these aren't debuts that turn away from punches or run to the other corner. Like, we've all seen those. I think we were talking about it earlier. But yeah, I know that I'm confident that if they send me that name, that they're ready, as long as I match them up accordingly with somebody in that same boat, in that same skill set. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the teams around Peoria area.
I'll say I've had just a handful of opportunities to do some pad work with Ryan Blackerby, and man, dude's on a whole nother level from anybody else I was able to experience. He got me working on my 2 and unders, making sure my footwork was in sync, and really got me, and especially with my hook. Who really didn't know how much he helped me out with my hook, but he helped me out with my hook quite a bit.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was like it's plain to see, like when you're around these guys like that, just watching how they train is so different from just the regular class that you get if you just go to a, you know, Muay Thai or a boxing class. So, and this brings up another point. If you want to be a professional or an amateur fighter, get a coach, get a trainer.
Yeah.
Like it will
100%.
shorten that roadway. I mean, by quite a bit if you have the right people and knowing where to go.
However,
I'm
having a coach also costs money. Like, also, it's also a matter of finding the right coach, because all coaches have different styles. Can they bring out the best in you?
Well, and coaches also have their own goals. Like, you know, I asked Ryan if he would train me, and he asked me plainly, like, are you a competitor? And to my thought, I'm like, yeah, I wanted to compete, you know, one time and then kind of be done with it. And I'm like, no. I mean, if I'm thinking about you and what you would want as a competitor, like I'm not that guy. So I had to kind of step back and be like, all right, he's like, he knows what he wants from his fighters, and so I just let him do his thing and pick the people that he needs.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's important. I mean, and I'm not saying that there's guys out there, girls out there that aren't ready in some other facet, but with me, it automatically takes them off the list. If they contact me, I have a pretty standard bio that I ask for with all their information, and if they don't have a coach, that's the first thing I say is then we're going to start there. You know, I need coach's approval. I need coach's blessing. I need to know that you're actually in the gym. That way I'm not blindsided. It's, you know, I've been in it a long time, and that's happened where here I am thinking this whole time that, you know, this person's training and it's a good matchup, and come to find out they haven't trained at all. And, you know, and then you get blindsided, and it's not good for anybody.
So enough about like our questions. Like, we wanted to know more about you. Well, you did ask us questions before the interview. Tell us stuff. Like, our audience would like to get to know more about you.
Well, I'd like to know a little bit, yeah, about your background. You said you were from the Galesburg area. Tell us a little about your journey from Central Illinois up into Iowa.
Yeah, so I grew up in Galesburg, 19 years there, and actually went to school to be a cop. My plan was to be a police officer, and then first year of college, I got a sales job, and I realized kind of quickly, like, salespeople were making more than police officers. And I thought that was kind of crazy to begin with, but so I just kind of fell in love with sales, and so I just kind of continued that path. And just for opportunity, I moved to the Quad Cities. Me and a buddy I graduated with, we moved here just because obviously Galesburg's small. There's not a lot of opportunity. So fast forward, was like 16 years ago, one of my buddies calls me up and he says, hey, there's this promotion, this MMA promotion, and they're looking for drivers. You're going to love this story because it's super organic. And he says, all we're going to do is we're going to drive like the fighters back and forth from the airport to the venue, the staff and all that. And I was like, cool, I'm in, whatever, you know, a few $100. And we went and did it. And I was literally introduced to the sport of MMA by Big Production. This was the International Fight League. This was the IFL when they had the team sports. Oh. So Pat Miletich had a team and Gracie had a team. And so super cool concept. They wanted drivers. So we did an event. And I remember they gave us all like the ringside, all the drivers ringside seats. And I was just looking around like, this is epic, right? And, and then they called my buddy Joe and they said, hey, you guys did great. How would you like to be our full-time drivers? And we're like, okay, I would have done it for free, but they're paying us, giving us per diem. I went to New Jersey, Chicago, Connecticut, did all their events as a driver. Well, now I become a fanboy. So I'm picking up Randy Couture and I'm picking up Chuck Liddell and I'm picking up Gracie's. And I'm like, man, this is crazy, right? Well, the IFL unfortunately spent too much money. One of my favorite quotes that I'll ever say is I absolutely love this sport, but I hate the business. I hate every part about it, the business. The business side actually is what messes up the sport side. But anyways, so I think the IFL, they overspent and they went bankrupt and they went under. So I said, man, I'd really like to stay involved in the sport somehow. Well, I ran into a buddy from one of my sales jobs back in the day, and he says, hey, man, I got a fight coming up. I'm like, what do you mean a fight? And he's like, yeah, I got a fight downtown Davenport at a ballroom. And I was like, okay, I'll buy some tickets, right? And I had no clue there was such thing as like local MMA or these like local shows. I just thought MMA was what I had just experienced, this big production, big venues. And so I walk into my first local MMA show, and I'll just never forget it. I saw this tiny cage. I saw a taco truck. I saw a couple guys with security shirts on, and I was like, well, okay. So I go up on the balcony, and the fights start. And very similar to what you were saying earlier, I see this guy come out, big corner man. He's tap out all over. You know, he's got all his gear on. He's ready to go. He's shadow boxing. And then I see his opponent come out. Basketball shorts, his girlfriend's his corner man, zero anything to him, right? And here goes 30, 45-second fight. I'm like, okay, on to the next one. Similar. On to the next one. Similar. I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening here, right? So it was a bad experience, and my buddy won dominantly, and I was like, okay, so tell me more about this. He's like, yeah, I'm a title holder for this promotion. I'm like, okay. So I start going to all these local shows within about a 3-4 hour radius. And with all due respect, it was a very similar business model. If you were a local guy and you sold tickets, you fought a guy that you shouldn't be fighting. It's just kind of how the whole structure was built for the most part. And in terms of production value and presentation, there was zero. It's how cheap can we throw up this show, and how much money can we make off of these ticket sales from these wildly mismatched fights.
That's terrible.
And, I mean, and to be honest with you, I was just like, this can't be the norm. So long story short, that's when I had the idea one night on one of those balconies. Like, I saw a man and a woman start tearing down the cage, and I said, oh, they must be like the cage people. So they don't have to mess with all of this and the fighters and all that. They're just the cage crew. So I'm like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I came home at night and I asked my wife, I was like, hey, I want to buy a fight cage. And she's like, okay, what the hell? So, yeah, like I told you earlier, we bought a cage from Throwdown, and the goal was extreme cage rentals. That way I could still be involved in the sport like I was, but I couldn't even fathom the idea of putting a whole event together and matchmaking and all that stuff. So I was the cage guy. I did that for a year. I worked with 6 promotions, and doing that, what I didn't realize as I was doing that was I was actually learning the inside of things too, and how these local shows worked. And again, I mean this with all due respect, but they were all the same. They were all that same cookie cutter, cheap, you know, make it as cheap as possible. If you sold tickets, you got easy fights. So, you know, after about a year of that, I said, you know what, why not try to emulate what they do on TV like the UFC does, but do it at a local level. Start visiting these gyms and filming these guys and doing interviews and showing the fans that there's so much more than that few minutes in the cage. But then on top of that, what I also learned later getting into doing shows is that a lot of the fans are there for one fighter. I mean, that's just how it works, right? And a lot of them aren't even MMA fans. So it's our job to create MMA fans out of them. But at the end of the day, grandma's there for her grandson, right? So she doesn't know anybody else fighting. Grandma's going to be sleeping, or so-and-so is going to be, they're going to be so bored. So if I can create a video or a countdown trailer or something before each fight and have this guy say this and have this guy say his thoughts, it kind of engages the crowd, and it makes these fans become more like fans. Like, oh, I'm going to go with that guy maybe by what he said. And so that's what I did. I said, you know what? I want to try this. If these guys can do it, I think we can do it. I have a vision of how maybe it should be more professional looking. These guys deserve more presentation. At least put some stinking lights above them. Oh, yeah. Like that type of stuff, you know? And so it snowballed. And, you know, in the first 3 to 5 years, I thought, I don't know, man. I don't know. This expensive. This is cutthroat business. And then I want to say about the 6th or 7th year is when I got a call from the Ultimate Fighter, and they asked if I was interested in having my flyweight champion be on the show. They were doing a champions year.
No kidding.
And I honestly said to the guys, is this a prank call? You know, is this like a prank call? And right there, man, is when I went, you know what, this thing could be legit. Like, we can get guys to the UFC, we can create a professional platform, and then I haven't looked back. Now we're going into our 14th year.
That's amazing.
I,
Like that's
I would love to see you compete with the UFC. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no. See, and that's the thing is the difference. What we do, it's not rocket science. Anybody can do what we do. It's just I've learned that promoters, some promoters have a vested interest. Let me give you an example. You own a gym, you have a team, and you're the promoter. So it's your whole team on the show, but you're also the promoter going out and matchmaking your team. And that's weird to me. How could you ever be down the middle if it's your guys you're bleeding with and you're sweating with? Me, I have no vested interest except for a fair fight. And if I could put a fair fight together and you guys win that fight, then I'm going to give you a professional stage and more eyes on it. And then that way, you guys are the ones that make it to the bigger stages. I'm just providing the platform and the matchups.
So is there anywhere we can go to see some of the old Caged Aggression?
Oh, I've got 5,000, I don't know, on my YouTube channel. Yeah. There's, 14 years of it. We put so what we do is, so we do a week after the pay-per-view, after the event's over, there's a 1 week discounted pay-per-view. And then we always put the show online for free. So all the way back to our little barn show when I was trying this thing out in Galesburg to last October's big one.
So actually what you told me, your story about capturing people's video and getting their stories before the fight to create more interest. We actually did something very similar a couple of months ago. So now my former boss of Peoria, he's still sort of my boss, Cedric Dockery, he trained with another person at another this gym called Core Fitness. So it's owned by a man named Michael Price. Now he put on a boxing show in town. So to help promote the event, we interviewed the Peoria fighters who were going to fight in that before the boxing matches to get their story out to promote the match. I mean, I would like to think that we helped promote that event and actually got people. But basically, that's the thing. You need to feed your audience before they want to get excited. Like, get to know their stories. Like, create like a story of heroes and villains, someone to root for.
Yeah, for sure. We've got I've gotten a little lazy on the YouTube ever since they took away monetization. Now you got to have 5 billion views to get any money out of them. But I've got a folder on there that has previous countdown videos. I mean, we've made hundreds of them, and some of them are super juicy. We're going to one gym and filming them training and getting their interview, and then going to another gym, and our editors chop it up, and it's beautiful. That's what I'm saying is I love the sport, but I was introduced to the sport with big production as well. So I like a spectacle. I like a backstory. I love all that, and then if you can have a great fight too. I guess what I always thought was at the end of the day, I can match as well as I think I can, but they're the ones that get in there and put on the show. So what if, and you've seen this on paper, this is going to be a great card, but then it just fizzles out and it doesn't, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Well, if I can put on a big show and a big production and the fights are subpar, well, that sucks. But at the end of the day, so much is out of my control. At least there was a good show and it kept the crowd up. But if I could put on a big show and the fights are great, then it's magic. And that's how you get repeat fans and repeat fighters.
I kind of think like American Ninja Warrior. You've
yeah.
got complete strangers. They're being introduced to the public for the first time. Just give this little background on what they're doing. And sometimes they'll just eat it immediately. And okay. And then sometimes you're pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's a mountain of work. We've cut down to, trying to do that with just the main and the co-mains now, because again, now I don't even remember the last time we did a one-night event. All of our shows are minimum 2-night events. And then again, we do some 3-nighters coming up in March.
So out of curiosity, I want to ask a few questions. So your organization focuses specifically on MMA, because again, I don't know what the rules are to apply to other states, but contact sports and boxing are two separate things here. Quote unquote, full contact sports could mean jiu-jitsu, MMA, Muay Thai, kickboxing, karate, anything under the sun. And so I would like to know more questions. So you just focus on MMA, right?
Yeah, 100%. And the reasoning behind that is, there was a point a few years back talking to Blackerby, and he really, 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 really was pushing and wanted to partner up. And man, I loved that. I loved it. My concern, well, there's a couple concerns at the time. My passion is in MMA. My network is in MMA. I love that. In Iowa, it used to be, and I don't even really know what's going on now. I'll just blatantly say it how it is. Some promoters don't want to pay all the money that it requires to put on events, and it's a lot in Iowa. I mean, from taxes to licensing to officials to ambulance to doctors, it goes on and on and on. Well, it used to be that if you wanted to do an MMA show, you've got all these costs and all this sanctioning and all that stuff. Then if you wanted to have a kickboxing match on that same night, you had to have a whole separate kickboxing sanctioning committee. And I'm like, well, I can't pay double, right? I can't pay double. Well, then that director left the Iowa Athletic Commission, and now we have a new one, and now I see kickboxing almost in every other promotion in Iowa. Now, what it used to be was that promoters would put on an amateur kickboxing show and use MMA fighters and sell MMA price tickets, but not have to pay for anything, not have to pay taxes, licensing, officials, doctor, ambulance, any of that stuff. And it still happens. I just never wanted to blur those lines. At one point, I was going to do a full kickboxing show, Caged Aggression Kickboxing. I was going to keep it traditional. I don't want to do fights in a cage. MMA belongs in a cage. I believe true Muay Thai should be in a ring. It's just my opinion. I don't want to put that in a cage. I don't want to blur the lines. And one night I had an exhibition kickboxing match and I lost my audience. And it was a great match. That's the thing, is like super electric. It was more electric than any of the MMA fights that night, but I lost my crowd. The audience, they were not into it. And it told me, like, I need to keep those separate. If I'm going to do that, it has to be separate from MMA. And it's just my passion's in MMA. So, yeah. It's not that I don't personally like kickboxing. When it comes to my network that I've built and everything, that's just who we are.
I mean, I love kickboxing. I do have a question for you. Going back over the years, is there any one fight that sticks out in your mind that's like, you guys need to go and watch this?
Oh, man. There's so many. I guess it would have to be. You
can give me a top 5 if you want. I'm gonna go and watch every single one you recommend. So.
Man, I'm sure you've seen Blackerby's pro debut.
Oh
yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. But no, I can go back to, I mean, Austin Hubbard's fights. He's in the UFC now. Eric Wisely was a lightweight that put guys in the hospital left and right. I mean, just vicious leg kicks. He had some wars with us, but then there's some of these like sleeper fights. I can put an amateur fight together, and if I didn't tell anybody in the crowd, they would have no clue it wasn't professional, and vice versa, as long as you match them up well. But man, there's tons. And sometimes my pay-per-view guys will they'll label the fights. So if you go to our Caged Aggression YouTube page, some of them will be labeled like bloodiest war in Caged Aggression history or whatever.
Yeah,
so you'll be able to skim through those and check it out.
So that is very interesting. Like, I actually took a class, went to Peoria Athletic Club to take a tutorial from Austin Hubbard. So yeah. Which is interesting. Like, I actually learned some of his techniques. Although the grappling on the ground techniques were something I'm not usually a grappler, so it took some really getting used to.
Yeah. And say earlier you had mentioned that before you got into MMA, you were doing some sales work. Can I just ask, what were you selling?
Oh, geez. So I worked, when I first moved to the Quad Cities, they opened up a place called American TV. It was based out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I know American TV.
Yeah. So I was working, in Galesburg, when I was going to college, I worked at a Staples office supply store. They opened up a brand new store, and the manager hired me to work office furniture department or something. Well, we're opening the store, and you got to load everything in. I was busting ass with him, and he's like, no, I'm going to make you my electronics manager. I'm like, I don't know anything about computers, electronics. He's like, I don't care. I need somebody with that work ethic. I'm like, okay. So I started doing that for him, and then I ended up transferring with that company to the Quad Cities. Well, then I sold a computer to the general manager of this new American TV, And he literally called me at Staples. And he's like stealing the employees. He says, "Hey, would you give me 30 minutes of your time for an interview?" I'm like, "Sure." So I go meet with him, and he's like, "What do you know about commission sales?" And I'm like, "Nothing." And he goes, "Well, if you don't sell anything, you don't make anything." And I go, "Well, that sucks." And he goes, "But there's no cap. If you sell this much, you make this much." I'm like, "Okay, I'm in." And that's what I fell in love with. And so I sold big screen TVs and home theater for the 3 years I was there. Then I went to IPCS, which was basically AT&T, but it was a smaller affiliate.
Yeah,
And,
yep.
man, I loved that. I thought I was going to retire there. Well, then AT&T bought them, and then they kind of crap on the smaller company. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. So I went to Sprint, and funny thing, they were, AT&T was SBC, and Sprint was IPCS, the smaller company. Again, I think I found the home, right? They're sending me on trips and all this stuff. And then Sprint bought IPCS, and that's when I was like, that was the transition time with the IFL, and I was like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do MMA.
So that's interesting because so I went on a similar career path where I worked for Best Buy up in Chicagoland, and then I actually moved with Best Buy down to Peoria. And then I started selling. When I was I was the first and only Magnolia certified customer assistant. So I could sell. I was the only customer assistant that I could sell anywhere. I was allowed to go anywhere inside of the building. I sold all of the big screens, the stereo equipment. Like that was my jam. And then I went over and I launched Best Buy Mobile. Had a lot of success there selling cell phones, and had the opportunity to go down to Peoria, and now I'm still in Peoria.
See, so you're probably a lot younger than me, but I was fortunate enough to sell big screens and TVs when the HD transition happened. So they're saying, your old TVs aren't going to work anymore when high definition comes. You're going to have to buy a new TV. So here come all these people because they're seeing it on the news, and they're like, they say I need a new TV. I'm like, no, you need 3 of them, right? You got 3 rooms. You need 3 new TVs.
The February 2008 digital transition was the big one that I got to deal with. We had a ton of people coming in for the digital transition.
Yeah.
But man, I learned a lot, and I won't go down that road. Yeah, I used to love plasmas. Samsungs were good back then too. Those LCDs, and then I've got a nice LG OLED now.
I'm glad we don't sell them anymore, though. Right? They're so inexpensive. Back then, it's crazy.
Oh, dude, there were companies like Tweeter, like you could make, dude, those guys were making awesome. Like I wanted to be one of them. Like I wanted to be one of those sales guys just balling out selling stereo equipment.
I know.
But now they're all in technology sales now, I assume.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that's my story, man. It was just the frustration over the 2 companies. Working for a smaller independent company, they really take care of their front line. Yeah. And then when a big corporation buys you, sometimes they don't. And after it happened basically 2 companies in a row, and then I was already in the mix of this MMA thing, I'm like, let's just go all in. Let's go see if I can do it with this MMA thing. And then, again, humbling 14 years later. I don't know. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Have you done any training for mixed martial arts, boxing, anything like that?
No, actually, when I tell people what I do, I get one of 2 things. I get that confused look, like they still don't know what MMA is, or I usually say, what UFC is, right? Depending on who I'm talking to. But then that is the question I get every time almost is, do you fight? And the honest answer is I've been in 1 fight my whole life, and I woke up in an ambulance.
Oh, damn.
That is no BS. Like, of course, go to the gym and stuff, but like, don't train. I don't fight. And maybe that's it too, is that I have a special appreciation for these guys and girls that get in there and they put on, first of all, they put all this sacrifice to making it to the show. They're going to work, then they're training, they're cutting the weight. I've had shows where, over Thanksgiving, they're not eating a Thanksgiving meal. And I have a whole level of appreciation for them because I couldn't do it. I could not get in there and do what these guys do. But in all fairness, and I say it in a lot of fighter meetings, a lot of these guys couldn't do what I do. So it's a beautiful marriage. It's our show. That's the other thing. When I first got into the sport, there used to be this culture of or there still is, promoter versus fighter. Like, promoters are snakes and fighters are not dependable and all this crap. And I was always like, wait a minute, we need each other, man. Like, this is our show. I don't understand this whole. So yeah, because I could never do what they do, I appreciate the hell out of it. They get in there and they put their health on the line for my entertainment. That's pretty special.
I agree. Not only that, like fighters can get CTEs and other life jeopardizing injuries, like, for our entertainment. Like, it's important that they find the right promoter, their safety. I mean, I know some regulations like having a doctor and a hospital nearby, but sometimes, like, especially, it is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think, like, for me, I kind of see it as having a doctor and a hospital is a bit redundant. If we've got a promotion and we're within, 0.5 miles of a hospital, and we've got paramedics, we've got EMT there, and we have someone who's trained to watch these individuals while they're fighting. I don't know. I feel like having a ringside physician, while it's nice, I think it's a little events. Most events.
And costly. I mean, that's the other thing too. Don't price out the people that want to do it right. I've always thought that about athletic commissions, but then I've also thought, like, some of these people that are in charge, they don't even know what the sport's about. They've just been appointed this position in these different states, and that's tricky. Like, I'm not saying you should have had to host a show or go through that, but you should at least know what everybody's getting into. From our standpoint, the promoters and the team and then you should know what the fighters are getting into. To make these rules and these regulations without knowing how it really goes is tough.
Yeah, I kind of saw it as a catalyst for underground fight clubs. And
right.
We saw it here in Peoria, and frankly, we continue to see it. How many backyard fight clubs happen every day, or kids are just fighting right after school, where if they had an avenue or some place where they could go that was a little more productive, I think we could be avoiding a lot of those things.
Yeah, for sure.
I positive situations for the youth.
Yeah, there's plenty of guys that have told me like they need fighting for an outlet. They're not trying to be a UFC champion, but it helps them. And hey, I mean, again, that's what I said. There's all different levels of fighters. It's my job to match them up right, but not everybody getting in there is looking to be the next John Jones, and that's okay too.
So looking at, go ahead, Anchu.
So that's one of the reasons why I mentioned that got the Combat Academy. The reason why he created Peoria Fight Club was specifically because he realized people would try to shoot each other to solve their beefs. So he set up in a way that basically they'd fight each other in the ring and basically make a spectacle out of it for the rest of us, instead of having them kill themselves. But there are some phenomena, people are realizing this. However, a lot of people have been criticizing the owner, this guy who created Peoria Fight Club, for saying that something would go wrong and it's basically illegal. But you are right that there needs to be some sort of outlet for young people. Like, one thing I did back during COVID was I worked with another local organization called Arting to teach martial arts and combat sports to young people. Like, I actually originally would join them to teach creative writing. They found it kind of boring. When I started teaching combat sports, they were a lot more enthusiastic.
I can understand that. I probably would be too. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. So the Peoria Athletic Club, and then the Peoria. Wait, there was also Peoria Muay Thai.
They're still around.
Okay, but not affiliated.
No.
Right. Yeah, and I won't get into that.
I'm told there's a whole bunch of stories that we don't know.
It used to be that way around here. Like, especially when I first started doing shows, it was like these gyms were so cutthroat, I don't know any of that, but like they wouldn't even work together. They wouldn't and now it's not. I mean, I think make each other better. I mean, at the end of the day, if they're not fighting each other, make each other better.
Dude, we're trying to pull off exactly what you were able to pull off in the Quad Cities in Iowa. We're trying to change. And what's great is we talked to Robert Bryant from KOK Boxing, Michael Price from Core Fitness,
Robert Bell's from
Robert Bell. Robert Bryant from Combat Academy. But all these individuals have kind of mirror the exact same thing. Currently, everything's siloed, but everybody wants to do something. Everybody wants to help somebody, but they're having trouble just finding that way to communicate in a way that's helpful for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So what do you think that little bit of magic was? Is it maybe just, I mean, I've seen your shows as kind of a success from Jump Street. Like how were you able to cultivate? I mean, let me put it this way. I see a ton of promotions who come into Illinois and they'll do one, maybe 3 bouts, or they'll just have one night with 3 fights, and then that's it. We never see him again.
3 the whole show?
3 fights. That was the last one that I saw in McLean County.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, and he killed it. It sold out. Completely sold out. It was a smaller venue, but he completely sold out. It was a smaller promotion from St. Louis was coming up. But then they're gone. Like we see them come in, then they just kind of they fizzle out, and I just assumed it had to do more with how the business of of fighting, which can be really, really challenging if you don't have the ticket sales or an established distribution network. So like how did you do that? How did you overcome that massive barrier?
Yeah.
If I'm being, you mean in terms of like the business side, like the finance to be able to do it?
Well, I mean, part of it's just getting the cash to do it. Did you get an investor, or was it something where you were able to grow your bankroll with your ticket sales? And
no, I guess that's the beauty, is that we never did any type of business loans. We were able to fortunately buy the cage on savings. So I mean, a huge investment, huge risk, not knowing what's going to happen. But it wasn't always like that. I mean, the smaller learning shows and all that stuff, I would say, well, I'm going to be one of those guys that says now that COVID was huge for us. Now we were already booming. We were already doing the multi-night events, got guys in the UFC. So I guess we were already doing fine. But I felt like personally we were getting a little stagnant. Maybe things were kind of becoming a little too similar each time. Too many of the same fighters, which obviously you have to have a certain amount of demographically local fighters to pay the bills, right? They've got to have fans in the seats. But here's what happened. So, and I got to be thankful I was in Iowa for this. So COVID, I have a 2-night event planned for March, and 2 weeks out, COVID pulled the plug on everything.
Yeah.
I got 35 grand into it already. Like what do you mean? Like I in all fairness, I never really got too much into like politics or government. I voted, but I never just really got too much into it, because I always thought at the end of the day, it really doesn't affect me. I mean, it kind of does. My gas prices, I get it. But this was the first time in my life that I went, oh, you have the power to tell me I can't do anything. I'd never experienced that. And here I am in the same room, like crying, like, what am I going to tell all these guys? Now the world's going through it, but here I am, like, we're 2 weeks away from a show. So that starts, I got a good friend of mine, military guy, and he's like, Mike, this is going to be like 2 years. And I'm like, you're out of your mind, right? This isn't going to be 2 years. Well, a month goes by, another month. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, what, are we just never going to have shows again? We just never going to be around people? So finally, being in Iowa, they told me that in September, I could host my show, but it could only be 600 people. They had to be distanced. They had to have masks. They had to have this. And I said, well, I can't even pay for the show with 600 people, but I'll figure it out, right? If I got to lose money to provide this stage for the fighters and continue doing what we do and not losing everything we built, then that's what we got to do. Well, then me and my team sat down together and we built pay-per-view. Okay, but we didn't just build pay-per-view. Like everybody's pay-per-view now since COVID, a lot of them will just set one camera stagnant on a tripod, and that's your show, right? That's your $35 show. So I said this. I said, no, I want full production, like, instant replays, time clock, commentary, just like we do at the show, but like on pay-per-view. But here was my thing. I want to build a platform that's just like the ticketing site. So when you go on our website to buy the pay-per-view, you can actually select the fighter from a drop-down that you're buying to watch, and they get a percentage of every buy under their name. Now check this out, right? So check this out. Now the whole country's calling me, guys, because nobody could have shows. But little old Iowa can do a 600-person show, right? So I did 3 back-to-back 2-night events, September, October, November. I got fighters from Hawaii, Vegas, California. They're flying themselves here because nobody could fight, right? And now guess what? I got Blake Builder, who he unfortunately just got cut. He comes from California, sells like 10 grand in pay-per-views. Why? Because he's got a huge fan base. Nobody can buy a ticket, but they want to support Blake. And we built a platform that gave him $2,000 because they got to select his name from the drop-down. And so now we're back to full capacity. I built a giant network that I already thought was giant, and we have pay-per-view. So now we're good.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one thing I have been extraordinarily critical over of guys like Dana White. You know, I mean, he was doing what I think at his peak, it was like a 17% revenue share with his fighters. And I think if you were to look at it today, it's closer to a 12% revenue share with his fighters. And, you know, we all know about the Reebok deal they did in the late 2000s, where he essentially took the revenue streams that were going into the fighters themselves and took them for himself. And I know there's a lot of hurt feelings on that. Yeah. But then outside of that, I look at the way the UFC designs their contracts to lock people in for a number of fights, and they're ironclad, man. They're really difficult. Like, you know, the Axeman, you know, he wanted to go and fight. Like, just let me out. Like, let me go fight with Bellator. Let me go fight with one championship. And he fought for years to get out of that contract. And I feel like there's a lot of fighters who kind of fall into that, and they wind up, you know, giving up their career. And, you know, I mean, if I were Dana White and I hear that one of my fighters is coming in, they've got $28 in their bank account, that's not a feel-good story to me. That's one of my employees. I'm a $4 billion company, and you're telling me that person with $28 in their account is going to come put their body, their mind, their life on the line for me for 17%? And those are the big guys. The big guys are getting a piece of that 17%. Little guys are getting $5 grand.
Right.
I mean, sorry, that's my rant.
No, I know. And it's all relative, because, like, I feel that based on what our show generates now, because it's pretty standard, my venue doesn't get bigger, my ticket prices aren't changing. It's not like we can add more seats, so I know pretty much what that's going to do. I kind of know what pay-per-view is going to do. And I think last March, our entire team got a raise. And I think that everybody is compensated fairly, which is why nobody complains. You don't hear Mike Goodwin this or Caged Aggression that, or I'm not constantly replacing my team members. I've had the same production team for over 10 years. Like, we grew together, we win together, we lose together. And like, so yeah, that is a little hard to watch Dana lose $1 million in a casino when my buddy Shelton made $5 grand. You know what I'm saying? It sucks. It does suck. Yeah, absolutely. If I made what he makes, my buddy would be with me. My buddies would all be eating. You know, we all got to eat.
Right.
But yeah, so no, that part's unfortunate. You know, I'm not here to run anybody else's business, but I do make fighters aware, like, you must have an end game. This is not your last job. This is not your career forever. Use the UFC or use MMA. Use your popularity to get into TV or start a business or open a gym, or, you know, these guys that think they're going to do this till they're 50, 60 years old. I hosted Pat Militich's fight, and his whole team, man, some of these guys I worry about them because their memory's gone, dizzy spells, and that stuff is real. And there's a life after fighting that I try to make these guys understand. Look, I get it. You'll fight anybody. Not for me, you won't. But like, look, just try to use your celebrity for something else later.
Yeah, I mean, I think about like Francis Ngannou. I think he's somebody who just, I mean, expertly navigated, coming from, I mean, homelessness, being in France and being trained by an elite boxing trainer there, and then using his prowess and his skill set to build I mean, incredible reputation, puts in the work, has the strongest punch recorded on their power cube that they have within the UFC, and then goes on a tear. Just knocking. I mean, he was the Mike Tyson of MMA. Like, I mean, everybody wanted to see that. But then what I think is unfortunate is he had to pull the Conor McGregor. He had to do the exact same thing that Conor McGregor did. If I want to actually make money at this, if I want to realize my value for myself and for my family, then I have to go to boxing. Right. I have to go to Floyd Mayweather or Tyson Fury. It's crazy to me that they're driving talent away from their business. So for, make a couple extra bucks, where I think if you had revenue like the UFC had and you invested more into your fighter pay, I think that you would have the top talent in the world beating down your door. I think you would have people that they wouldn't go to the NFL or the MLB or the NBA. They would choose to go to the UFC instead. And he's hurting himself, and in conjunction with that, fighting as a whole, because they're so prominent in the industry.
Yeah. And there's so much money. Are you familiar with this new GFL?
No, I'm not.
So they're a promotion that's going to be starting, but their contracts are pretty wild. And I worry like it's going to be like IFL, where they're going to overspend or spend. When you're spending other people's money, it's easier to spend, I'm sure. So if they got investors, doing it, but like the contracts are crazy. Now they're locking guys down like the UFC, but for like your top regional guys, they're making more than they would make off their first fight with the UFC anyway. And your first fight with the UFC comes with a contract that locks you down. So will they be able to? Yeah, the UFC is a powerhouse. They've got so much money that you can never really compete. And for me, like, another question I get a lot is, why don't you travel? And for me personally, like, we've done it a handful of times. We did the 75th anniversary of Sturgis out in South Dakota. We were the first professionally sanctioned show out there, brand new athletic commission. Because they'd had fights at Sturgis, but they never had sanctioned MMA. So of course we did a 2-night MMA event. We built a mini replica octagon on the back of my truck and drove it up and down the strip and at ring girls, and like, it was a spectacle, man. And it was probably one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. And it was just, there was like 1 million people there for Sturgis. It was just bananas. But a lot of the time, and this is just who I am as a person, every region has some show, has some promotion, has something going on. And I remember when I first came here, there were 4 shows in the Quad Cities alone when I came here, and 2 of them called and threatened me. One, I was at a movie with my kid, and the guy keeps calling, this is my area, blah, 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 that type of stuff. And now you fast forward, and now there's nobody but me. Because you don't have to be an asshole. You don't have to be. What you had was a bad business model. You had a trashy business model that eventually people get sick of, right? They want fair fights. They want a good show.
Well, I just think like Colin threatened you, the guy with 500 MMA fighters in his phone. Like what are you thinking?
So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great sport, kind of rough business. I mean, you guys can already see that too on some of the business stuff. It's filthy.
It's tough, unless you've got $50,000 in the bank to get started here in Illinois. It's really, really rough. I mean, that's just, an amateur promotion. If you want to do something professional, you're talking even more.
So who are the powerhouses? I mean, I know of I see like Chicago stuff, some smaller ones in Chicago, but there's no powerhouse in Illinois. There's no, unless a show comes to Illinois like Bellator or something.
I would say, so the first MMA show I ever went to was in 2009, and it was a Bellator show.
Yep.
It was Frank Mir and Fedor,
Okay.
which really interesting fight. But it also was a very disappointing experience because they focused so much on the TV production, they forgot that the crowd was there.
Oh no,
So,
no,
like,
I know.
well, like all the local guys that were fighting, which I was jazzed up. I'm like, all right, there's some guys from some local MMA gyms around here. Let's go.
Yeah.
They had this brilliant MMA fight, or I'm sorry, a heavyweight fight that was going on. But then these two big heavyweights got in the ring and they started fighting, and then 30 seconds in just got gassed. And they just started doing the thing where they're just kind of going around the ring, just trying to catch their breath for like the last 3.5 minutes of the fight.
Yeah.
But it was just one camera overhead looking down into this really saturated, viewpoint, but you couldn't really extract any joy from it. It was disappointing. But that was why I decided to make a promotion myself, or at least try to, and fail.
Well, no, yeah, I remember the UFC. I've been to a bunch of those, and like sometimes there's a 45-minute gap in between fights because of TV time and pay-per-view and all that stuff, and that'll kill a fan. I mean, you're a fanatic, and that just kills the vibe, right? Like,
dude, if they told me so I could go and get a beer and buy a T-shirt,
right.
that'd be awesome. But they're like,
Right.
they don't say anything.
Yeah.
So you don't know if you're waiting. Like sometimes it's just 5 minutes till the next guy walks out, and then other times it's 30 minutes, and I'm like, I want to spend money here, but I don't know if I can right now. So for me, that was pure mismanagement on the promotion. They were just lasered in on their nest egg, which was that Bellator or the live feed.
Yep. No, I'm big on that. Like, I mean, it starts with the fans that buy the tickets. So like there's no even dead air. I won't even allow dead air at our show. There's no dead air in between anything. Heck no. I'm not letting the crowd because I understand, especially at this level, that the majority of the fans are there for a particular fighter. So I at least want to give, a smooth experience for those newcomers, because maybe they'll be back. I remember taking our oldest, took him to a hockey game. We have a local hockey team. We weren't into hockey. He was super young. He was so young that he would always make me leave at the third period. That's when you want to see the game the most, right?
Yeah.
And but by going there with him, I kind of fell in love with hockey, and then so did he. And then he ended up playing street hockey when he got older and stuff. But I would have never, unless I took him just on a whim to a hockey game, I wouldn't have fallen in love with the game. So I say that a lot. Like one time, 2017, check this out, guys. I did a completely free show. I wanted to give a free sample of what Caged Aggression does. You want to get you want to get marketing, 5,000 people lined up down the blocks for an hour and a half, jam-packed in there. No tables, just general admission, pack them in, give them a free taste of what we do. We did that, and that was crazy. But those are the things over the years. Like, anytime I feel things are getting stagnant or what do we got to do or whatever, and that was prompted by those samples at the grocery store. We ended up buying this brisket or something because I tried some, and I said I would have never bought that if you didn't give me a sample, and then it hit. Like, we got to show our show.
I've been kind of toying around in my head about, how do you put together the best family experience? Because that's where I think is the missed marketing opportunity. Most of the mixed martial arts promotions, boxing promotions, they're catering to that 21 and over mature audience. I think if you can dial it back into that family environment, that's where I think the real sweet spot is.
Yeah.
But I've got what my thought was the best way to implement that is you have to have things that are adjacent to combat sports, but are also available in that world of entertainment. And like my buddy ran his name's Ryan. He owns the item shop in McLean County in Bloomington. He puts on a gaming convention each year, which has been wildly successful.
Whoa, that's him?
Yeah, it's my buddy Ryan and Frank. They put on a gaming convention out in McLean County, and just hugely successful. But they started having, the last 2 years, they've had a wrestling show come in, and it sold out. Like it was just packed. Like you had people standing around the entrance trying to get in to just see what was happening because there was such a high level of interest. And I think you should do that. I need to connect you with Ryan. Ultimately, that's where I was going with it. It's like I think having wrestling and mixed martial arts together in I think it would almost have to be more like a fair environment, almost like an outdoor kind of thing, or maybe have a nice indoor space. But having those things adjacent where you know that you've got that family level, age 6 to 16 really covered there, and then it's an easy transition because especially if you have community support, coaches and trainers out there, they need to build their brand and their business. Have them doing the same thing, giving a taste of their mixed martial arts or their Muay Thai, their boxing, just have a little showcase going on around there. Suddenly you're going to be developing interest into mixed martial arts. But ultimately, like I would love to build like a feeder organization over here that feeds into an organization like Caged Aggression.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And that's the thing is like me, I'm always trying to reinvent the wheel. Like every show you would seem it'd be the same thing, right? But like the new theme, it's a new title. My next adventure, I just haven't got anything back yet. Well, I guess you'll hear it here first. So I filled out this form on Guinness Book of World Records. I filled it out on the website.
Yeah.
If they don't have a record, so you could search records, right? If you can't find it, you can apply to start a new record, right? Well, I've searched the internet left and right, and I cannot find one. I have never been able to find a 4-night MMA event. So before I even go down that road, I thought, I got an idea. Why not get Guinness involved? If they approve it and they come or however they got to do to record it, and I can do a 4-night consecutive MMA event and they will flag, tag it as a world record. Well, now I'm going to contact these gyms and say, hey, you want to be a part of a world record and do a 4-night MMA event, which is kind of cool. And I'm always thinking stuff like that. Like, just put fights together, Goodwin. But no, you gotta get people excited every time. You gotta get them re-excited.
All right. Well, here I've got one for you. So I'm gonna spill the beans on what I've been working on for the last several years with my partner Zach. Essentially, what it is, it's a marketing tool. But you've seen the power cube that the UFC made.
The punching cube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've developed a new version of that has it. Number one, it's safer, so you don't bust your hand on it. It's also we've put artificial intelligence into it as well, along with some other mechanisms that come along with the AI that allow us to determine a fighter's what's the best way to put it, their level, like how good they are. But really what it does with the sensors is we can measure punch strength. So imagine you're at a fight and you've got people who are walking in there. Your fighter who's up in that first round, we've already logged their punching data in there. You can show off exactly how strong these fighters are. Like, hey, can you punch harder than this guy? He's a 150-pound MMA guy. I don't know. But what it does is it asks the question. And once you raise those questions in people's minds, there's typically an action that will follow.
Yeah.
So I've been tinkering around with this idea. We've built the device. We've built the UI, the front end. We've built the back end. And we're just looking for a place where we can make it go.
Well, it's pretty cool. Well, yeah, because what you're doing is you're also you're gaining interaction, right? Right.
Exactly.
You're getting. I want to try. Oh, I bet I can hit harder than he does. Sometimes I'll walk around intermissions and stuff, and I'll try to like listen to crowd or like booths in the back. They'll listen for me because I want to know what people are saying. Like, do they want different lighting? Do they, I want to hear the negative too. And sometimes we don't always hear the negative. You just hear the good. And I want to know that stuff. So, but what I do hear a lot is, oh man, I would have taken him. Oh man, I'd have kicked that.
Yes, you guys.
Like, you would have done that to me.
Exactly. So, you know what? Prove it.
Yeah, prove it.
and with the way they've changed sports betting in throughout Illinois and the United States, is
Yeah.
there's eventually we can add in the sports betting mechanism where, like, I bet you $10 that I can put the $10 in, and then you can come up with an algorithm that'll develop a ratio dependent on your stats versus the person, and then you get a payout. But there's a whole lot of regulation that goes on there before we can implement something like that. But one of the things that we've certainly thought about with the when we put it out into the marketplace.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. I automatically think like I would want a display of it. I would want every fighter on the card's punching power that they recorded, and then they interact. Yeah. We brought in punching machines. Man, we brought in punching machines, obviously photo ops. I brought in a giant Bud Light truck with video game systems on it and girls. I brought in bouncy houses. I brought in race cars, anything to try to just add something. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, yes, it's about the fights. It's about the show. But, like, what's wrong with a show inside a show? You know what I mean? The more of a spectacle it is, the fans like that. I like it when I go places.
Yeah, you got to meet my friend Josh too. He was really helping. He was a professional wrestler for a long time, and he helped me just develop a lot of my ideas and how to interact with an audience like that. Because, like, that's exactly what those guys do, man.
Yeah.
So he had just a ton of things that are done, like, kind of in the background at wrestling shows, that if you apply to a martial arts arena, works the exact same way, but nobody's doing it. And we can talk a little bit more offline about some of those things that you can do to get people hyped up. But man, he had some just really, really impressive ways to get people just moved, like emotionally invested in what's happening on the screen in the middle of the ring. It was another one of those things that just got me so excited to be a part of everybody here in mixed martial arts.
Mm-hmm. Little things. I mean, sometimes too, if maybe like the 4th or 5th fight, all right, in the itinerary. Okay, they've watched a handful of fights now. Let's throw out some T-shirts. Let's do something different. When fighters are walking back from their fight before the next set walks out, we're playing live commercials. We're playing our sponsor commercials, Bud Light. We're playing, La Quinta commercials. There's always something going on. There's never dead air, dead time. I don't want to lose the fans. It's only 3 to 4 hours anyway. You can fill that time. The more interactive it is, the more I think that we get to build fans of the sport, or at least in our show. I mean, because they're there for a certain fighter. That fighter's going to go somewhere else and fight. Unfortunately, sometimes they're going to go backwards and fight in the fairgrounds, and then their fans are going to come and go, "Wait a minute, what is this? We were just," you know what I mean? And that part sucks, but I can't control that.
Well, like I remember looking at all the other promotions that are out there. I went through everyone, and I remember specifically like your lighting rig. I was like, damn, this guy has got the lights. Like, everything else is awesome, but holy crap, these lights are flipping incredible.
Yeah, it's cool. It's my sound and lighting guy. He's a wizard, and that's the thing. I get all the credit, but like, I have guys on the teammates, like my video crew, sound and lighting, my design, like graphics and photo guys. They're kind of like me. It's never enough. They're never good enough. They're always trying to figure out how to make it better. Everybody around them is like, dude, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen, but they're not happy with it. They want more, right? It's a double-edged sword when you're a perfectionist, but you're also, you know what I mean? So
yes, very much.
That's the kind of team I have. That's why we've all grown together, because every show they want to make better. Well, now we're up to like 67 nights of fights, 67, 68, 69, as I believe what these are coming up. And every show they're trying to get better. Every show, just like I am. So that's awesome.
So what way would you like to see your organization grow?
I don't necessarily think at this point I do. I just want to help more guys get to the big stages.
Oh.
I want to quit when I say I'm done.
Okay.
Not when the business or the sport makes me, or whatever, or COVID. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to say when we're done, there's part of me that thinks like, am I doing enough for my family? It's not a super lucrative business unless you're Dana White. I finance everything on my own. So there's no partners, there's no loans. We don't do that stuff. So like, I don't know, every year is kind of like another surprise for me. Like, I still get to do this. There's still hundreds of guys that want to sign up every time I put on a show. And so I don't know if it's necessarily with where our kids are at and where I'm at in life that I want it to get bigger. I just want it to stay big enough to help guys get to those bigger stages, because I feel like that's what keeps us like prominent. You know, it's like anybody could throw lights above their cage, but they're going to have to put in an insane amount of hours. They're going to have to put a bunch of money up front each show, and they're going to have to give a shit. They're going to have to care for it to continue for 14 years and getting better every time. That's my secret sauce, is we put in a lot of work. We care about the fighters and the show and the fans, and I think it shows. So it's a big question, because I don't know if I necessarily want the promotion to get bigger. That would require more cities and, you know, more cages, more team. I wish I could do more shows, I will say that. But these multi-night events, I mean, there's so many aspects behind the scenes. You know, one fighter might have a total of 14 graphics, 3 videos, not to mention databases and tickets and paperwork and blood work and sanctioning and all. It's crazy. So here I am juggling 70 fighters for one weekend, and each fighter has a mountain of stuff that has to be done. My pay-per-view team, like Jens Pulver, he will create an individualized pay-per-view trailer for every single fighter on the card that promotes them, their gym, tells them how to buy the pay-per-view. I mean, we work our ass off for a few months to put on this spectacle, you know, and then we take a little break, and then we start over.
Okay. I got a question. How can we get Caged Aggression to Peoria, Illinois?
All you have to do is bring the Iowa Athletic Commission with you. Now, I don't know if you know this name. I don't even know if I'm going to get in trouble saying this name to you guys, but I don't know if you know anybody by the name of Nancy. With the Illinois Athletic Commission.
I know who you're talking about.
It's so Nancy, I can never go back to Illinois. If Nancy's still in charge, I cannot put everything we've built in the hands of somebody that doesn't seem to support the sport. I just can't. I want to. If there was somewhere I would go, like, and Ryan, when we talked about kickboxing, he's Mike, I'll provide whatever you need. The money, the fighters, whatever you need, just please put on this show. Kickboxing needs production. It needs some level of presentation, some level of like something. And I'm like, I want to, Ryan, but again, I can't go to Illinois, and it's not my thing.
Oh,
I have a question. Well, it's the next level to that, I would say, is if you don't want to come to Illinois, would you help, using your vast knowledge and expertise, consult with myself and Anshuman to put together a show here in Illinois?
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's easy. Knowledge should be shared. If you're good at something and you've gotten good at something, I should say, you should share it. You know, you guys aren't asking to come to Quad Cities and try to start your own promotion. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole different world. I want to see more shows that care. You know, I get messaged at least twice a day from promotions all over. Hey, do you got a 145er? Hey, do you got a 170? Well, first of all, I'm not a manager. I don't have anybody, right? I don't have fighters that I'm going to call that trust me and say, hey, will you go to that place in Virginia? I'm not going to do that. But I get that a lot. I want shows that I can confidently send these guys in between our events. Or if I don't have a spot for somebody, that's the worst. Like, at least I can recommend a show or two. And there's not a lot of those out there, unfortunately. There are. Yeah. It's just some of them you have to travel kind of far.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask, and Anshuman, you can stop me here if I'm getting crazy, but I am really interested and would love if we would have the opportunity to interview the fighters that you have fighting in your upcoming event, March 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Would you be open to doing something like that?
Please do.
Oh, would you guys be? I mean, time is valuable.
Are you kidding? No. This is what we do for fun. We love talking to fighters, understanding their background, why they're fighting. Like this is what we do. So like this, it would be an absolute honor if we could interview the fighters that you have working within your promotion.
That'd be epic. Yeah, that'd be, of course, like we had said earlier. I mean, all that's just extra exposure. Exposure is a great thing if it's done right. You know, pre-fight interviews, videos, graphics, like just conversations, training footage. You know, I tell these guys, like, put yourself out there. You know, people want to, like, a lot of the fans, and I'm this way too when I go places. It's not their job to care about how much time it took to build this event. It's not their job to care how much time you spent in the gym training. It's not their job. But boy, do they appreciate it when they know, when they find out, when they see some, like we've done some time-lapse videos before of building the whole event. And, you know, when you see that, you're like, oh my gosh, this was an empty building, you know, and now it's this. Well, imagine, like, you know, the fighters seeing a little bit of training footage, some sparring sessions. The fans don't get to see that. They have no idea. All they see is that short amount of time in the cage. There's a different appreciation when you see that stuff.
Yeah.
So, of course, exposure is great.
Well, I appreciate that. And so the other thing I just wanted to mention, because I know we're getting close to our end time here. So I actually learned about your promotion from outside of the mixed martial arts community. So I was working for a company. I won't say the name of the company. They're the largest telecommunications company in Iowa. Okay. So I worked for them. I was in marketing. I was going up to I think it was Dubuque, and I stopped in one of the stores there, and two of the front counter girls are huge MMA fans. They go to every single one of your shows. So when I told them that I like doing kickboxing and I was doing all, they're like, "Oh, you need to check this out." And then I was hooked. As soon as I knew about it, I started asking around. Then like, man, like I was on it, man. Like you have a phenomenal promotion, and like your customers appreciate what the heck you do.
Hey, shout out to those girls. I don't know them, but hey, shout out, shout out to them. That's cool. No, I love hearing that stuff, man. It's cool because you guys know now, like talking, just a fan. I mean, I'm literally just a fan that was in sales. I got to drive some celebrity fighters around and got hooked. I mean, that's it. There's I'm not a fighter. I'm not a coach. I'm not a manager. I really love it. And I tell people this, like, and I worry about this because of like, if I do something else, if my end game is not MMA and I, you know, work for a company or something, the feeling that I get when I sit down on fight night after doing the meeting, and I watch it all start and I watch the show open and I see everything that we've been building for 3 months come together, there's no feeling that any job could ever replace like that. And so could I make more money going somewhere else? 110% I could. I have made more money at other jobs. I have an incredible wife. She enables this. She works. And honestly, that and helping these guys get to bigger shows and seeing guys I've worked with and build up and now they're on the UFC, those feelings, you can't replace that. So fortunately for them, I'm kind of hooked. Even 14 years later, it's not financially hooked. I just know I can't replace that feeling when I sit down and that show starts. It's incredible.
Look, the fighters that fight for you, the customers that come and view your shows, like everybody all around, when I mention the name Mike Goodwin, they've all had phenomenal things to say about you.
That's awesome.
Like it made reaching out to you just a natural progression, because it was like, this is the guy. Like, he's the guy. Like, he cares. You can see it in the work that he does. You can see it in how he puts his matches together. So, man, like you have the most exciting promotion in the Midwest. I am thrilled to be a part of it. and I'm really excited for the future, and I'm really excited to start interviewing your guys and learn more about the business.
No, of course, man. That and they love that too. That'd be awesome. That would be really cool. And obviously, if you guys are that weekend too, can come down and we'll treat you that weekend and come check out the shows. Have some seats for you. Give you some backstage passes, whatever.
Let's say, yeah, if you can get us some backstage passes and some press passes, so we can come and do some filming and maybe some interviews. I'm not a huge fan of post fight interviews. It really depends on the fight and how everything kind of turned out. But I would love to do something like that for you. That would be a blast.
Yeah, count on it for sure. If you guys have the weekend free, definitely.
It will be free. Anshuman. I want to touch on that again. So upcoming event, the Triad, March 20th, 21st, and 22nd at the River Center, 136 East 3rd Street in Davenport, Iowa. Can also be viewed from cagedaggression.tv. General admission, just $45.
That's it. And I'm I've got under my phone right here on the desk, I've got 3 notebooks wide open, all top to bottom full of names. We could see where are we at here. Like the madness has begun. Like, and it's just a process, guys. It's like it's a love-hate because I have a timeline with everything. So okay, by the end of January, I want to have the majority of all 3 cards done so we can start the promotional train and all that stuff. But I never want to like rush a matchup. And then, once in a while I'll book a matchup, and then that next day a guy will say, "Hey, I'm in." I'm like, "Oh, it's too. Where were you? That would have been a better matchup." So it's a fun process, but it's wild. I mean, again, if I need 76 fighters, I've got to talk to 200. I mean, to realistically get the right 76 fighters, I don't need 76 names. I need 200 names. I mean, to really put the puzzle together. So it's unfortunate because that's a lot of people that I don't have room for, but that's another reason why I can put great fights together. I mean, I'm not working with 76 guys and I need 76 guys. I'm working with hundreds of names to be able to get down to a certain amount. Again, double-edged sword. It's a love-hate thing, and I do the research, I watch the videos, I do all this stuff until a matchup excites me. And then that's the first part. If I go, "Oh, this would be a great fight," well, now I got to get those 2 to hopefully like it as much as I did, and so maybe one does, maybe the other doesn't. And I start over, back to and it's just over and over, day and night, working around their schedules. And then somehow it always shakes out to a great night of fights.
Dude, we're gonna have to hang out offline because you've got to meet my partner Zach, and I've got to introduce you to our punch box device because I think it's gonna make your matchmaking go a whole lot faster. It's gonna make things more simplistic, and you're gonna be able to very ethically put people together.
Okay, yeah. So I think we've run out of time, folks. So thank you for tuning in to Peoria